In the previous episode, at last, I got something that I was going towards for 6 months. My parents were going to expel extra children back to the shelter, and I got the feeling that I didn't want it at all. Hi everyone. I advise you to start watching the previous episodes if you haven't seen them yet. And Emma is with you, and I think I'm going to give up, because my sisters were really important to me. I was scared. I was terribly scared. I had never done what I was going to do before, and it made my nerves stretched like ropes. But I had to confess everything to my mother, and whatever happens, Chloe and Danny and little William, they didn't deserve to be kicked out of the house. Mom sat in her office and worked as always. In my opinion, nothing could ever knock her out of her schedule. She worked even when she had a temperature of 40 degrees and trembling hands. But during a work schedule, all the lines came out clear from under her hand, as if there were no diseases. Iron Lady, that was all about her. I scrambled at the door quietly and came in, and then I froze on the threshold, afraid to raise my eyes and start talking. I knew what would happen next, but I still couldn't prepare for it. Mom raised her head from her papers and looked at me very attentively. It was as if, well, no. She couldn't have known that it was all arranged by me. Maybe she could have guessed, but she had no evidence of this either. My mother nodded, and I started the story. From the very beginning, or rather, from the moment I saw her and father at the entrance to the shelter, and decided that they would be a great family for me. And then it turned out that other children already lived in their house. Happy, unable to survive and achieve their goals, and terribly naive. And how I came up with a way to get rid of them from the very beginning. I talked, and I just couldn't stop. I described all my ideas and how I fulfilled all the points of my plan. And then I realized that I really didn't want those who didn't even know about them to be responsible for my transgressions, and that they should punish me, and let them not be touched. My mother looked at me again with the very same look, and asked if I was sure of what I was saying. She meant whether I really wanted to be punished for them. I nodded, and then my mother said that she appreciated my honesty, but she still couldn't forgive me for what I've done in pursuit of my happiness. And since locking me in my room and depriving me of sweets was useless, it was easier to bring me back to boarding school instead of the other children. So to say, no person, no problem. Not for a while, as I planned to do to educate my brothers and sisters, but forever. Well, for the remaining 2 years until I aged out, without the right to go back. There you go. This is what I was afraid of. Although I really understood it after my revelations, my mother just couldn't do anything different. I really interfered with their lives, created problems, blackmailed them, framed them, and in fact, I had never been a perfect child, and the family didn't have enough time to get used to me in 6 months. I agreed, and I went to pack my things. In my room, my torture continued by the fact that every knick-knack reminded me of what I had lost. Joint photos, small gifts like the beaded friendship bracelet I used to laugh at, funny socks that roamed from closet to closet all these 6 months. I could be really happy here. I was accepted and loved at once, simply because these particular guys never grew teeth and didn't know any other way. There was also Harry, the guys from the Smart Club, an older funny neighbor with her poodles. Leaving was painful. It was even more painful to understand that I had ruined everything with my own hands. Instead of just living, I thought that I was the smartest. I was making some plans, and then I sent all good things to the bottom. Like, why does an independent and cunning person like me need these fools? And it turned out that I needed them very much. Tell me, why do we start to appreciate only what we've lost? The only thing I asked my mother was for some time. I wanted to say goodbye to everyone, so that I could see how it felt when it was good. My mother agreed, and moved the taxi to the next day. After my suitcases were packed, I went to the girls, and told them that our parents had changed their mind about bringing them back to the shelter. The twins were so happy. They didn't even ask why suddenly my mother, who never changed her plans, changed her mind. And there were so many hugs and so much laughter that it would suffice for a couple of weeks. Even when I couldn't stand this puppy adoration and confessed to them that I had set everything up by myself and that I just wanted to make it up to them. They didn't get angry or shout. They just hugged me again and said that I was still wonderful even if I thought I was evil, and that I just needed someone to wake up my heart. Probably it was true. My heart just woke up a bit late. Couldn't it kick me earlier? Then, maybe, I wouldn't have to tear them all out of there with such pain. I fell asleep in the girls' room, tiredness, and then this nervous swing. I just sank into a deep sleep on the extra bed that they put in for me in the very first week at the Smiths. And all night in my sleep, I chased my sisters in an attempt to protect them from the big evil monster. And when I caught up to them, it turned out that I was that monster. I didn't tell the girls that I was expelled from the family instead of them. In the morning, we went to school as usual. It was my wish as well, a kind of the last one, like they give to a sentenced person. There, I also had someone to say goodbye to, and it was necessary to arrange a couple of things that I kept forgetting about. And first of all, I wanted to make sure that when I left, my sisters wouldn't be bullied and tormented again. And for this purpose, I needed to have a proper talk with those classmates who consider themselves superior to others. And that was nice, for I no longer had to hide, intrigue, or pretend that I was just talking nonsense. Yes, it was a big surprise for many that a cute girl with big eyes, a kawaii one, as the guy from the parallel class said, could talk like a port leader and be quite good at real fighting. Well, why? It made no sense to pretend any longer, and it wasn't my fault that some people could understand words better after you gave them a black eye. The class, and the rest of the guys in the school, got the idea. Now the girls were looked at with fear and respect, for no one wanted to get into trouble with me. By the end of the day, the girls were completely confused, and only batted their eyes when some kids greeted them politely. But it was not the end. It was just kind of a warm-up before the hardest conversation. I had to talk to Harry, at least to explain to him why we couldn't be together. Being a convinced coward, I put the conversation away for later, until I realized that the lessons were over, and Harry was about to go home. Then everything in me woke up, everything that I diligently put to sleep, and my feet carried me to say goodbye. Harry agreed to talk, but he looked the same way as my mother. That is, sharply and attentively. Not a trace of feelings, no matter what they were. I felt terrible. I even thought whether it was worth it to let my hair down if he didn't even care. But my personal conscience told me that it was worth doing. Unlike my mother, I wasn't going to repent before Harry. My uncut story hardly interested him, and this fact reduced the time of our conversation significantly. But the reason why I had a quarrel with him and left as his enemy, well, honesty is a great weapon anyway, for it hurts so much that the bullets can only dream of. While I was telling him how I had followed Jackson and been restoring justice, Harry was silent. But when the story got to blackmail, it seemed that he had been caught up with emotions too. He tried to say something, grabbed my hands, but I did the right thing. I said it didn't really change anything, because there would be no we anymore, because I came to say goodbye, and not even for the sake of myself or him, but just for the sake of my sisters. It was important for me that somebody looked after them, and a long-distance relationship? No, it was pointless, and it wouldn't work. Even if I suddenly went crazy and really wanted it, and I did not want it. I did not want a long-distance relationship, but it seemed that Harry had thought about something else again. We broke up peacefully, even probably as friends. Well, at least, we repeated it to each other no less than 3 times. He promised to look after the girls and wished me luck, and he left. It was really painful to watch him go away and do nothing to stop him. But I told him the truth. Distant relationships were not for me. And smart books advise to cut off love ties at once, because then they sprout in the heart and hurt. At home, I looked at my room once again, then at the yard where we had played and had a barbecue, then at the small garden in the corner which my mother had planted for me and my sisters. And then I went outside, where my mother was already waiting for me in her car. We nodded at each other, and she helped me to put my suitcase in the trunk, and said that I had to go. And then, with the same stoned face, she started the engine of the car, and we moved on. I looked at the Smith's house through the rearview window for the last time. I was very, very sad that I was leaving, and would never go back there again. My mother peered on me silently in the mirror. Subscribe to the channel to not miss the continuation of the story.